Good evening, my friends. This is Todd from the R Sword blog coming at you again with a study, this time again on the shepherd's rod. And this is just something I threw together when a member of the shepherd's rod sent me an email with some quotations that they wanted me to look up concerning Ezekiel 9. And this is what I found. I'm just going to read my response to him. I've read each section carefully, from well before and well after the portions you've pointed me toward. And here is part of the reference that they gave me. Quote, unless they repent and leave the work of Satan in oppressing those who have the burden of the work and in holding up the hands of sinners in Zion, they will never receive the mark of God's sealing approval. They will fall in the general destruction of the wicked, represented by the work of the 5 men bearing slaughter weapons. That's 3 Testimonies, page 267. Brother, these things are surely going to happen. It's only the time that the shepherd's rod has mixed up. Those who do not sigh and cry, and thus do not receive the seal of God, will be slain by the 5 men bearing slaughter weapons, just as you say, just as the Bible says. But when? Ellen White is clear, quote, they will fall in the general destruction of the wicked. When the slaughter of the 5 angels happens, which is the general destruction of the wicked, the church's work is already done. Quote, but the general slaughter of all those who do not thus see the wide contrast between sin and righteousness, and do not feel as those who as those do who stand in the counsel of God and receive the mark, is described in the order to the 5 men with slaughter weapons. Go ye after him through the city, and smite. Let not your eye spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. That's again, 3 Testimonies, page 267. Here again, you see the general slaughter of how many? All those who do not thus see the wide contrast between sin and righteousness, do not feel as those who stand in the counsel of God and receive the mark by the 5 men with slaughtering weapons. Is it only slumbering Adventists who do not thus see the wide contrast between sin and righteousness? No, it's the entire world, except those who have been sealed, who do not see the wide contrast between sin and righteousness. The entire world do not feel as those who stand in the counsel of God and receive the mark. And she says they all will be slaughtered by the 5 men. All who do not have the seal will be slaughtered. How many is that? The entire wicked world. Where will the slaughter start? Who will feel the first stroke of the wrath of God? Quote, begin at my sanctuary. If you notice the Achan comparison, she says, quote, how does this instance compare with the course pursued by those who will not raise their voice against sin and wrong, but whose sympathies are ever found with those who trouble the camp of Israel with their sins? 3 Testimony again, page 267. Calling individual comparison, making the point that we need to be calling sin by its rightful name, that we need to be sighing and crying. What she doesn't make is a comparison to the church's work, or say anything about how only after the sealing will the church spread the gospel to the world. It's not there. Quote, in the time when his wrath shall go forth in judgments, these humble, devoted followers of Christ will be distinguished from the rest of the world by their soul anguish. That's 5 Testimonies, page 210. Those who sigh and cry will be distinguished from the rest of the church? No. Clearly Ellen White says they are distinguished from the rest of the world. There are not 2 dividing lines, 2 distinguishing lines. There is only one. It is between the righteous and the wicked. It is between those who sigh and cry, God's people, and those who do not, the rest of the world, including the tares in the church. quote, "Go ye after him through the city and smite. Let not your eye spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary." Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. Here we see that the church, the Lord's sanctuary, was the first to feel the stroke of the wrath of God. End quote. That's all from 5 Testimonies, page 211. Take a close look at this passage. She quotes the Ezekiel slaughter and says in this command to go through the city and slay everyone without the seal, starting at the sanctuary, that the church is represented by what? The city? No. She says clearly the church is represented by the sanctuary. Here we see that the church, the Lord's sanctuary, was the first to feel the stroke of the wrath of God. 5 Testimonies 2:11. So, if the church is represented by the sanctuary, what is represented by the city? The rest of the world. Thus, the command given by God to the 5 angels to go through the city and slaughter everyone who doesn't have the seal, starting at the sanctuary, is a command to go through the world and slaughter everyone who doesn't have the seal, starting at the church. You see, I mean, we're speaking of Christ's second coming here, when the wicked are destroyed by the brightness of his coming. Okay, there's not some separate, specific slaughter of the church. The command is given to go into the city and slaughter everyone, starting at the sanctuary. And Ellen White says, here we see that the church, the Lord's sanctuary, was the first to feel the stroke of the wrath of God. So if the church is the Lord's sanctuary, and after they start there, they still have a whole city to slaughter, what's that city? The rest of the world. Please, 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 if you are in the shepherd's rod, I beg of you, come out of her. Victor Houteff is a cult leader. I mean, he made all kinds of predictions about this and that, just like all these other false prophets, right? He called himself, David, right? It's him and all of his followers. After they were disfellowshipped from the Adventist church. Get this straight in your mind. Anyone who is not yet a Shepherd's Rod member. Shepherd's Rod is not part of the Seventh-day Adventist church. I don't care what they say. They are not part of the Seventh-day Adventist church. They are not Seventh-day Adventists. The Shepherd's Rod is a cult, and they are a separate church. After they got kicked out of the Adventist church, after many attempts by the Adventist brethren to bring them back, and they had these meetings trying to just, get him straight, Mr. Houteff, from all his wacky ideas, he refused, and finally they had to disfellowship him. They had to kick him out of the church. And so him and all of his followers went down and got this compound in Waco, right? In Waco, Texas. And we all know what ended up happening there. And then, so he made this prediction that, in such and such a time, is everything's going to go down and blah, 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 and I'm going to be the king, blah, 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 blah. And then none of that stuff happened. Well, no. First, because he had this prediction that such and such was the time it was all going to happen, the slaughter was going to happen, yada, 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 he urged all of his followers to sell all their property and all their possessions and bring all the money down to him in Waco. And they did. And of course nothing happened. And then he died a little while later. And then there was a battle amongst, the rest of these Shepherd's Rod people about who would be the next leader and this and that. And the people that won stayed there at Waco, and they were called the Branch Davidians, and that, how that ended up with, what was his name, David Koresh or whatever, the guy that ended up with a standoff with the government, FBI or DEA or ATF, whatever, and they had all this stockpile of arms and, weaponry and all this weird stuff about, I don't know, did they have polygamy going on where he took different wives and he was getting with like children and stuff. I mean, just sick, all right? A stockpile of weapons, a standoff with the government. Are you kidding me? This is not Christ's will. That's not what Christ taught. I'm sorry, I'm just going off on a tangent. That stuff should be common sense. But please, if you're in the shepherd's rod, come out of them. Come out of them to the pure love of God. The Bible message is so simple, and it doesn't include all this wacky stuff about God coming and killing everybody in the church, and then setting up this earthly Davidic kingdom in the Middle East, ruled by whatever prophet is in charge at the time, and all this wacky stuff. That's not right, and that's not Adventist theology. That's not Christian theology. That's just wacky Guyana drink the Kool-Aid kind of stuff. That's Jim Jones, all right? And then there's like a bunch of different branches of the original Shepherd's Rod cult, and now they've got like a bunch of little cults all vying for power. And one of them says that he is the Lamb that is able to open the seals, the seals on the scroll from Revelation, because only he has the correct interpretation of these seals, and thus he is the Lamb that can open. The Lamb is Christ. The Lamb is Christ. Just like the rock in Daniel 2, the rock that's cut without hands that comes down and smites the image and breaks it all and grows into a kingdom that fills the whole world. The rock cut without hands is Christ. The Lamb who is worthy to open the seal is Christ. It's so sickening, the way people are just gluttonous for power, and it's unbelievable. So I would just urge those who are in the shepherd's rod to please consider the words of Christ when he said, in the end will come many false prophets, and they will deceive many. And anyone who is talking to a shepherd's rod member, anyone who mentions Victor Houteff or the shepherd's rod, or calling the Adventist Church mother, or anything else like that, do not just be very careful. Be very, very careful. Because what that does, just like the secret rapture theory, I talked about it in my last video, never mind. I don't even need to go over why it's so dangerous, why their theology, why Satan came up with this theology through these people, and it's trying to attack the true Christian church with all these wacky theories. Because it's a reason for people not to get ready. It's a reason for people to say, well, go to my other video. Yeah, I talk about that. Anyway, this is just some more things. This is just a response that I had to somebody asking me to read a couple portions of some of Ellen White's writings. And if you don't know who Ellen White is, don't even worry about that. Stick with the Bible and the Bible alone, and don't let anybody tell you anything about, study it out for yourself. Be like the Bereans, right? Search the scriptures to see whether these things are so. And I don't know. Much love, and I hope this video helped somebody to escape the clutches of Satan and that particular deception that he has out there. All right. God bless.